begin. Welcome to the December meeting of the PCAC. Um, At this moment, we do not have a quorum, but we can do several things as we have received emails as far as the budget is concerned. But we'll do the chair's report first. Needless to say, it's been a very eventful 3 months. I'm sure everybody is aware that we now have a chief transformation officer and a chief operating officer who have been appointed. We await what they are about to bring to the board in terms of reorganization, consolidation, whether they will in fact remove the 2,700 positions by attrition or another means. So we all await that, obviously, and what the impact will be on service, on the various sectors of the MTA system, what that will mean for responsibilities for the various agency presidents, which is a sticking point for sure, at least with one president I know. So we await all of this. I am sure you have also heard within the last few hours that the MTA and Local 100 of the Transport Workers Union have reached an agreement. It remains whether the union membership will ratify it, but just in the last, yeah, well, hopefully, yeah. And details of the agreement were just released within the last half hour. They weren't released on the news clips that we got this morning or anything, but it looks like it's something that could be ratified by the union and will help management in their goals of putting a lid on overtime, giving people multiple tasking, healthcare issues. So it looks pretty decent. As far as the Transit Writers Council is concerned, on-time performance continues to ratchet up. It's at a place where we didn't think possible a few years ago. If you ride the subways frequently, you'll notice that they seem to be coming more regularly and that the dwell time in each station is a shorter period of time, which, if you do the math, means a much quicker trip from endpoint to endpoint, which means that it's likely there wouldn't be delays on that train set's return trip. So this is really great news. We hope that the momentum can be kept up. There is a ton of work. Anyone who rides the system nights and weekends knows it's a scorecard you need to keep it up. But we hope the work progresses in a way that is not too inconvenient. To give you an idea about something that we're very happy about, when the November financial plan was released, there are no budget-driven service cuts. That is a very important thing to everyone in this room and the millions of riders that we represent. That doesn't mean there wouldn't be seasonal adjusted service cuts, such as on various bus routes or on various commuter rail routes that are busier in the summer than they are in the winter. And then one really persistent thing that I have spoken up about is once the L train work is finished, which it will be in April of 2020, and the trains resume their normal frequencies, the M trains on nights and weekends, which were routed up to 96th and 2nd Avenue, will be terminated at Delancey, Essex. This is a problem for me because that means stations like 14th and 23rd will get a 50% cut in their service. I asked if they could at least extend it to 34th Street, maybe not up to 96th Street. I know that the borough president of Manhattan would like it extended up Central Park West even, but all the way up, to Harlem and Washington Heights on the route of the Sea Line. But I think 34th Street would be a good compromise. I understand that we're in a severe financial shortfall period, and the out years do not look good. The out years never look good if you've ever seen the financial plans, but we seem to be able to do what's necessary to make the next few years workable. So we will be talking about those kinds of issues. And with that, I would move, yes.
Under either old business or new business, but
Sure.
since you brought it up, what is the rationale if it's working and it just gives better service, I doubt if the cost of running 3 or 4 miles further on the train would cost that much in the whole scheme of things. And maybe you could explain the rationale of cutting back on the M once.
I don't know the exact amount that it would cost and how many additional train sets would be required to go from Delancey, Essex, or the rationale, but I can attempt to find that out for you.
Could you find out for the
Sure.
since you brought up her concerns?
Sure. Well, running to 168th Street would be,
No. But at least your compromise, going up to 34th.
yeah, I don't think that would be that, but it would
Well,
require an extra
can
train
you
set or
get can
two.
you get the numbers?
I will try to
Gail
do-
likes numbers.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
Speaking about the M train, there is complaints already that if the L train goes back to full power, the M train, the one thing I think they're forgetting, it's not a good spot where it terminates at Essex Street because there's famous of switch outage. And I think it'd be best as we as TRC, we need to put something in straight and clear that the M needs to be terminated at an accessible station. And if it has to go back to 96th Street, not the whole time, but just during the evening times, it does help out the F train customers because there lately in Queens Boulevard corridor, there's been delays on the F, and sometimes the M has come in and saved the rescue, even
And
on the
let's
weekend.
not forget that when you switch from the M to the F at Delancey, Essex, it's on a whole different level.
Yes, that's what I said.
Yes.
It's also related to accessibility.
Stuart?
Just the point I brought up at our divisional meeting, that maybe it should be rerouted back to Chambers Street, because you have the connection with the Broadway line at Canal Street, and you have the connection with the IRT
But
at
that doesn't
Chambers
fix
Street.
the issue of 50% cut at 14th and 23rd
It
Street.
doesn't, but it connects with 2 other major lines, and if they're telling you their financial issues, there's a benefit to that than just terminating where they're telling you.
Okay.
I am. I just say, as I was actually heading to Transit Center the other day, they were actually doing construction at Chambers Street.
Yes.
So I think be better. I agree with Stuart, but I'm just saying maybe it'd be best if it could terminate at Broad Street because Fulton Street is the next accessible station, and it will connect to the AC and all other letter trains there. It does give more accessibility and more access to other
Even
train
better,
lines.
Even better.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just giving you the heads up. Thank you for bringing it up,
Yes,
Stuart.
Chambers Street has been known as one of the worst stations. It's finally getting some much-needed work. Let's go to, it's underway. Let's go to the Long Island Railroad report. Mark, anything to add to your,
No, I'll submit it and take any questions.
anyone, any questions on the Long Island Railroad Chair's report? Mike?
I am. Mark, I just want to compliment with your Long Island Railroad staff crew because my counterpart for the part of the OPWD with the Advisory Council of Long Island, they wanted to thank your crew at the Long Island Railroad as well as Long Island Council. As you know, we had that snowstorm and they were getting assistance because of the snow and everything, but the staff were there helping out. So there are some of the self-advocacy groups who had to go to a conference, and during that bad weather, they wanted to thank because at least it was getting shoveled at the stations on the Montauk branch. They were really appreciated and getting on the train safely. And I'm seeing a lot of safety with the Long Island Care stuff going very well.
Mark, I have a question. Have you gotten any information on the derailment that happened just east of Jamaica, which got back in service really fast, but all the reports were it was a broken rail? Do you know if that was caused by a train? Or? Couldn't hear you, Mark.
We haven't, but we're hoping at the next meeting to have a full briefing on it.
Any other questions for Long Island before we move to Metro North? Hearing none. Randy?
Hi, well, okay, report is there. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Chris?
Randy, last time you said you will get back to me regarding any new updates with the Metro North regarding, forget about Yonkers, I'm not going to worry about. Any new updates that they've been doing with accessibilities? Because I was reading your report, I didn't see anything specifically. And I was just asking Randy, any new updates they've been doing?
I think the only thing is I saw something about the Ludlow station, on the Hudson line. That's one below Yonkers.
But anything, are they going to be starting doing any similar like Long Island Railroad does, like the care, Long Island Railroad Care, or called Metro North Care? Because that's what I'm hearing from the last.
There are people around in Grand Central that.
No, I'm talking about staff. I was talking about, before you say this, I know, I just want to add, I'm just asking, is any brochures going to be going out in the next couple of months from now?
I have no idea.
If you can find out, thank you.
We've advocated to Kathy Rinaldi for a similar contact at Metro North as there is at Long Island Railroad. And when when people need assistance at a station who either boarding or disembarking from a train, they can ask the conductor. And there are some of the trains have some of the stations have the movable bridge platforms, but we're going to continue to ask for that, so we'll follow up.
So we discussed that at one of the Metro North meetings, and Mike Schiffer is on our email and saw that it was an action item and told us that the Metro North already has a similar program to Long Island Railroad Care.
Any other questions for the Metro North report?
Yes, Randy. What we need to do is get a straight answer from New Jersey Transit on two vital issues. And one of them is when we're going to get our second express train back on the PCAC Valley line. We got a letter of non-commitment from response to Kathy Rinaldi's letter to President of New Jersey Transit. And we have no real answer on when that's going to happen. And
Isn't Kevin Corbett quoted in the papers as saying he won't have the train staff until late in 2020 or something?
he didn't say that. He just said
I thought I saw that.
he just said we don't have the staff yet, and we're not getting any answers from him.
Yeah,
He's been very opaque, and that's a huge problem.
And Kathy has said that Metro North will withhold payments to them.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
You know.
but what Oren is saying, that they're not putting forward even a schedule of, at this point in time, we'll have, the engineers trained. They could be much more forthcoming than they are right now.
The answer's never.
Well, I got an email yesterday from one of my friends, and he said that last year, both his son and his daughter, they're like in their 20s, had applied to become engineers in NJ Transit. They never heard a word. So it's unclear how anybody can even apply for that.
I think the MTA pays better, so they're applying to.
Right, and of course the other issue is getting a clear status on the positive train control. They're in big trouble, and it looks like they're in much worse condition than the MTA is on the east side of the Hudson River. So we need some really good answers from New Jersey Transit on that, and I don't know if that'll be forthcoming.
So the FRA did put out a list of percent completions on the railroads, and it said that, I have to look back at the specific numbers and get it to you, but it seems to be toddling in the right direction, but it would definitely be better to hear from the operating agencies. Agree.
Anything else for Metro North? All right, Lisa, do you want to give your report? We will, though.
I have a brief executive director's report that I'm going to hand out to the folks who haven't seen it. This was sent to the members with the budget. Essentially, it's been just over a year since I started here, and what a year it has been. Thank you. We have been very actively involved, staff and council members engaged with the board, with media, with advocacy organizations, elected and appointed officials, and key senior level agency staff. We've written op-eds, appeared in numerous news articles, been asked to participate in panel discussions, and we've raised our profile significantly, and that's something that we're going to continue to do. I was speaking with somebody, and I said, well, when Beverly was here, and they said, you can't compare yourself to Beverly or to the organization when Beverly was here, because there are so many more advocacy organizations that are in the field now, and that's very true. So we have to continue to differentiate ourselves, because we do have a unique role and position to play, and we look forward to continuing to work with all of the members of the council, with our hopeful new members of the council, and with and members of the public and our communities at large. Since I raised the issue of potential new members, that's looking for a piece of wood. 5 members had been submitted to the governor's appointments office for the Metro North Commuter Council. Right, they still won't be full, and they're still in a sort of a limbo status where they haven't gotten to the background check yet. We're trying to find out a little bit more about how the process works for our appointees and how they go through the review cycle and how it compares to other boards and authorities and agencies and organizations that are where members are appointed. For both for TRC and the LIRRCC, the members that were the two recommended members are now in background check. So they're both recommended by Melinda Katz. So she is leaving office at the end of this year. She won the Queen's DA's race. So I have impressed upon the governor's office the importance of moving them forward before there's a real limbo period, because there'll be an acting Queensborough president, then there'll be a special election, then there will be another election that'll be held to fill her seat. So impressing the importance of moving that forward. 2 additional applicants were sent from the Nassau County Executive's office, is in Mark's report. So I confirmed that the governor's office has their applications and will follow up with them. So it's an incredibly frustrating process, but it's one that I've been advised by staff there that if we continue to remind them that we've got members in the hopper, that might help move things along a little bit. I've also reached out Metro North to the appointing elected officials office to ask them to intervene and move things to the next level of at least background check. Shouldn't have people up there for months and months, and one of the people had never responded with paperwork, but yeah, it's challenging enough to get recommendations, and then they can't just sit. So I have copies of the report for folks who didn't get it, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Regarding for TRC, did you get any appointing for the Brooklyn? And how about for the LIR? I'm guessing none for the BP. I'm not surprised. Trust me, I am not surprised.
Let me ask Mark, the new applicants or the new recommendations for members of your council, have they attended any meetings? Do you know them?
No, this just happened about a week ago.
So they didn't attend meetings
Well, they
and say, oh, this looks interesting, I would like to become a member?
No, I think they were worked through legislators.
I see. I
out
see.
there.
Okay.
I did meet with the mayor, liaison in the mayor's office, because we have vacancies there for TRC as well, and they're working on it also. The public advocate's office asked if we had any recommendations, and I pointed to the person asking me the question. I said, you. And the public advocate advised me that his liaison said that the public advocate is not appointing staff members to be liaisons to boards, that they want people, and they're looking for recommendations also. So.
Stuart?
Did they say anything about holdovers at the mayor's office?
No. They did not.
Don't
No,
think,
so anybody who asks me a question about, well, what about our existing mayors? What about our current appointees? I said, look, every appointing person has the right to do whatever they would like with their appointees. Ours are very active. But if you're going to even consider it, first fill your vacancies. Don't unappoint somebody until such a time as there's somebody to step in. Otherwise, we have holes and we don't have complete membership, and we can't do, our legislatively mandated responsibilities. And as you know, there is no term limiting on our members as there are on-board members. So that when the appointing elected official leaves, that doesn't mean that you're all automatically, you continue in that position. So rest easy, when you're not getting away that easily.
So, while we don't actually have a quorum in the room today, we have received email responses to Lisa's question about the issues of Mark being named second vice chair of the PCAC and the budget that is before you.
I think that Jerry was going to make a motion.
Yeah, I just want to know if anyone has any questions on the budget itself after having read it, the proposed budget for next year.
Just a question. Due to the fact that since Carol is retiring, thank you, has retired, is there going to be a replacement for her?
That was in the budget.
No, I'm just asking for the future, because.
We're working on it.
Yeah, that's the question. But to me, with beginning with the budget, I have to say, I understand where we have to, with the budget, but the question I still may, let me try to put this in an easier way. Because this is, Lisa, it's new, but every year, and I'm trying to say that if somebody's talking, I gotta concentrate in my head, I'm sorry.
Yes?
That means everything still
Okay.
stays the same for this year, for next year, or is it going up?
You look at the document, it goes, there's a slight increase in the amount that the MTA
Okay.
provides to PCAC.
Okay.
That's not for salaries or anything. Okay. Okay. So then we would need a motion if we can, do we want to take them separately?
Separately, yes.
Okay, so a motion for the budget?
Make a motion.
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent, and we did have 4 people respond in the affirmative, since we do have a number short quorum person. And Jerry, I believe you wanted to make a motion.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Mark Epstein to be the second vice chair of the PCAC.
Second.
Larry seconds.
All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstention? I'm sorry, Mark, you're outvoted, because we have enough people who've all said yes. So, thank you. So, what that also then means is then, as the second vice chair, Mark can designate a council member for the executive committee. Okay. Do you want to? Thank you for bringing that.
Yes. For those of you who are not aware, it was actually in today's obituaries in the New York Times, but a real pioneer in the transportation. Okay. A real pioneer in consulting. Carolyn Conheim passed recently. Many of you know the firm Conheim and Ketchum or remember that. Yeah, she was, if you have a chance, you should look at that.
It says she was the PCAC chair in 1977.
Wow.
The first.
Caroline was a very special
Very.
person. And when I was working at the MTA, when there were very few women, she pushed a lot of things forward. And she and Beverly were very, very close
Yes.
also. So, I didn't open my Times yet. I carried it with me. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's very sad. And 81, I mean, young these days. Do you know if this proposed calendar for 2020 has been distributed
Yes,
to
it was.
everybody?
Yes.
Okay, does anyone have any comments on the proposed meeting dates for 2020?
That was just the chief confirming he's on his way. And apologies for just getting that to you. We had to do a little tweaking because of some holidays, some bad travel days, some conflict days. Also, the board has put out their January and February schedules on the website, so that was very helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time just to explore meeting times for the PCAC meetings yet again, even though we've done it already a number of times, but maybe another shot at it based on the number of people that are here.
Yeah, we raised this at the very last
we did.
meeting, and, yeah.
Yep.
And you're right, it's one of the action items, it was to put out a ranked choice for times and locations. On the earlier one, and we'll send it out again because we didn't hear from everybody, and people in the room we did hear from. People not in the room, we did not, but we will send that out again as a ranked choice, doodle, I guess a doodle poll or whatever
Yeah,
kind of.
not hearing from people doesn't necessarily mean they agree with the current schedule. So
right.
we'll make a real effort to reach out to everyone.
Yeah,
So we-
so then that's, with that understanding, these are subject to adjustment based on that.
So everyone is pretty much in agreement with the proposed schedule, pending, again, reaching out to people. Yes, this is the full PCAC. You don't? I think you should care. No, I care, but okay. Okay. All right, just, you said I don't care, so, yeah. Okay. What was that?
Email was sent out a little while ago.
Just, wasn't there a vote taken at the last PCAC meeting, though, about this,
51 to
about the schedule?
There was a sense of the room at the last
A sense of
PCAC.
the room,
Yes.
which was to keep it like it is, right?
That was the sense of the folks there at that time.
Okay,
but,
I just
but
want to
look,
make sure that I'm not imagining.
of course, you know, I don't think your members come to your meetings too much even so.
But there
that's-
was discussion there about changing the time of it also. So the one thing that was closer to the edge about the PCAC meetings was the potential location change. But it was pretty even about wanting to keep the time, but the request was to do a rank vote.
There was something I remember, Mark, you and I agree with Mark last time, as well when I was here. PCAC, if we have to do one time a travel meeting, like say, sometimes we do it once here, like one time here, somewhere, Long Island Railroad area or Metro North area one time. Maybe we should try that, to try to maybe sometimes move it like one time to try it out for a night meeting or more. We'll see how it runs, because it seems like this voting, first it was approved and then it got changed again. I think we need to try to see how can we change, how it's gonna work. I think we should do like experiment.
Somebody said it would be too confusing. I don't know who it
Yeah,
was,
that
but
was
that
an
was.
issue.
Edith, that was Edith.
Yeah, that's right.
I think the point was raised that the public not knowing where, having some consistency since it's a public meeting was her concern.
The issue basically was the time of day and whether it should be downtown or midtown. Those were the two overriding issues.
Yeah. I think if you start doing them on Long Island and Queens, I think it'd be really insane. And-
Yeah, I think it would be too.
And for people like Metro North to go to Brooklyn, I think it's
Yeah.
really a time-consuming.
No,
thing.
absolutely.
It was midtown or downtown, basically, yeah.
Right, and one of the things that we're bumping up against now with Midtown is the construction at Penn Station, and we don't even know if we're gonna have that room this for the next year. So
That's
trying
the- yeah,
to
that's right.
identify a
That's the side of the
location
concourse that's going into.
in the dungeon there. So we're gonna, Deborah's continuing to follow up to make sure that we have a place to meet.
Are they gonna decorate it, like, when you go back to the museum?
Decorate, it's gonna be demolished, I think.
With a wrecking ball.
Lisa, so is across the street off the table now, or?
At the ESA office?
Yeah,
Uh,
we've met there several times.
Right, that's one of the things we're following up on.
Oh, okay.
We're waiting to find out what the schedule for demolition is. Honestly, I mean, you guys are in Penn Station every day. I was there last night. And all the construction barriers that are up are just extra places for the homeless to sleep.
Right, but the East Side Access space wouldn't hold PCAC.
But the East Side Access space would not hold PCAC, but not the conference room that I'm familiar with, but for 20, potentially 38 people plus our public and speakers. But we will, but we'll follow up and we'll see. I mean, Gray Bar does have rooms that could accommodate. And once Eastside Access opens, then everybody, can just travel there. It will be easier. Wait, are we doing?
And when is that going to be? Lisa, when is that going to be?
December 2022.
Just right. That is what we have heard, and that is what it will be.
Can I
And we
hold you-
hear you're
Randy,
going to
can
be
I hold you to that?
Do you want to put some money on that?
Can we hold it, can we hold it to you?
The-
You
Yeah,
said
yeah,
that there?
yeah. You
The
want to put
governor
some
has
money on that?
announced. The governor has announced that is when it will be completed. I would bet on it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it'll be finished, but it will be open.
And then Penn access for Metro North can begin.
First comes the designing of the East River tunnels, right? Those tubes need to be rehabilitated.
Yes, they do.
Those haven't even been designed yet. And Penn, I know that Penn Access, that the community outreach is beginning, and I hear it on good authority that the website will be launched next week for Penn Access. Don't know a URL yet. They're still working on a number of issues, including their outreach to the large institutions that it will be most affected.
As long as you're prognosticating about finishing things, do we have any, or maybe Andrew, when the work on Grand Central Station, not the terminal, but the subway station itself, because of the new buildings going on, because it seems like every day, and I use it so much, but every time I go, something is closed, something is open, do we have any idea about the completion of that? Are we going to have to wait until the Vanderbilt Avenue buildings are built? Or
For the shuttle area, yes.
Not for the shuttle area, for the main area of the station, 42nd Street.
That doesn't have to wait till one Vanderbilt is done.
This-
I'll find out for you.
Could
Yeah.
you find out,
Yeah, I mean, the
please?
elevator, at least they're making the announcements now about when it will be open, even though
Yeah.
it's April or June or something. They're making the announcements on the 7 train on their way into the station. But the accessibility at Grand Central is awful. I mean, you have to go on the street to get
No,
to
it's-
an
it's-
elevator.
I really would suggest that Alex's team go over there and look at the signage.
Yeah,
and-
that's-
And maybe like put a few lines on the floor.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, I am in tears every time I try to deal with it. And I just end up going up to the street and wheeling all the way over to the Port Authority.
Believe
Oh my
believe it or
God.
not, that the signage makes it
Terrible.
exacerbates what is there, because the signage is not only that it's not there, but it is incorrect. It might have been correct for a week ago when they were doing something, and then they don't change the signage when they change the stuff, and it is frustrating as hell. And I know what it does to me, and then anytime anybody recognizes me, they say, "Why aren't you doing something about this?" And I say, I'm not even doing for myself, as we're all wandering around trying to find a way out to the street.
We will do that outreach. So one
Please.
of the issues at Grand Central, which is very similar to the construction at Penn Station, and anywhere where you have railroad connection that's to, at, or near a transit connection, has been the lack of coordination between the agencies. And one thing I am optimistic about, and will prognosticate in support of, is that that's going to get better with capital construction. The team that's being built, that's looking at an approach that's similar to Third Track, that will focus on those methods, especially because it's design build. But for instance, like Hunters Point, looking at the LIRR Hunters Point Avenue and the 7 train that are adjacent there, if they're going to do work and there need to be any closures, doing them at the same time, so that they're talking to each other. We were meeting at Penn Station one day, and there was a lot of concern about signage and what's happening at the subways, and the guys at Penn Station said, "Oh, that's not us, that's transit. You have to ask them." I expect that those conversations will diminish over the years as the capital. One of the reasons we haven't seen the details of the capital plan yet, from what we have been told by Jano and team, is that they're looking to bundle projects in a much more efficient and effective way that will make the most effective use of outages and crews, GOs, so that there isn't hopscotching and a lack of clarity. So, that remains to be seen, but I have heard, when you hear somebody say the same thing in a number of different places to a number of different people, it hasn't changed. So I'm very pleased that and optimistic.
Well, that's Einstein's definition of insanity, when you keep on doing the same thing over and over again, thinking it'll change, and it doesn't. But I read or heard somewhere that one of the things in the capital plan and the cutback and the budgeting is that redundant positions in the various agencies would be eliminated, so that there would. So what you just said, Lisa, about having the people involved in construction talking to each other, wouldn't that be eliminated if you have one person who maybe talks to him or herself regularly?
So I think the word that they're using is consolidated or transformed or optimized, that there are going to be people with areas of expertise within the different agencies, but they're going to be under a new construction and development department that looks at all the different phases of construction through all the different agencies. What, as Andrew said earlier, one silo, one division that's under Jano as the president of that, and he will be, as will the other units that are going to be brought together for under the transformation efficiency plans as they're being rolled out, will be bringing people with different areas of expertise from the various agencies, but also having them stay and be able to be responsive to their areas of expertise. So, as Andrew had said, the November, the budget that will be voted on by the board in December, and all of the presentations that Bob Fran has given indicate 2,700 person headcount reduction. What Pat has said several times is that they're not looking to, he says it sometimes, they're not looking for layoffs, they're looking for attrition and consolidation, but not any layoffs or anything that would happen until, and even if it does, until later in the year. I think they're also waiting to see what kind of union contract came out and what funding issues that would bring with it.
Was my understanding, and maybe you can find out about this, that as these positions were eliminated, they were going to look for duplications in the same position in all three agencies or multiple people, and not to necessarily get rid of the people, but just maybe put the good people in another position so that you have one person. I'll just use construction, station construction or changing the light bulbs, that you have three people in Grand Central, one person who is in Grand Central Terminal because that's Metro North, and one person who is in Grand Central Station, each assigned to changing the light bulbs. And that rather than having two people doing basically the same thing upstairs, downstairs, that you just have one person or one position to change the light bulbs.
And they use different light bulbs in the terminal versus in the
Well,
station.
I know,
too.
but they can keep a stock
That's
of
not
light
exactly
bulbs.
what I was going to say. I was going to say that that's a contractual issue if you're going to talk about light bulbs. But if we're going to look at the broader picture, say, of construction management, which is something that's a headquarters or construction
But there are
area, there are different. One of the things that the MTA has to do because of the design build is ramp up its construction management and project management areas of expertise. They have put out job descriptions to the market at large. They've also put them out internally for people to apply to, so that they need to bulk up in those areas. I wouldn't say position elimination. I would say consolidation of duplicative functions across agencies, because that's the terms that are being used now. I
Yeah.
don't want anybody to say, well, PCA said that jobs are going to be eliminated.
But, you know, there may be 3 HR, 3 IT departments, things of that, where you
Okay,
don't, you
can
know.
I just say something from a bit of experience of what's occurred at the MTA so far, which is just beware, because they consolidated the IT departments. And so that money for those budgets did shrink. They didn't look at worker productivity, which now, where you could get something resolved within a couple of hours, and now you can be without your computer for several days. And so what a department's budget shrinking doesn't necessarily reflect when overall worker productivity. The same has happened with HR, where by merging them, staff, if they're trying to find out something about their vacation, about their health care, used to be able to just, oh, what's this, on a lunch break. Now it can take several days and a lot of phone calls. So I think that's something to watch out for during this consolidation, transformation, or whatever, is worker productivity can be at risk.
There were 4 RFPs that were put out that are going to be responded to. That are, I think the response is due at the end of this month, that looks at transformation plans for 4 specific functions, including communications, including legal, I believe finance, and then there's one other. But the CTO hasn't started yet. Not all the positions in that office have been filled, so how it's going to proceed is a whole nother question.
So Andrew, I was going to say something similar to what Ellen was saying, that when we were here as a board, we heard this before when they created the Business Service Center, and we heard the terms consolidation and rationalization. So we really need to look at the effects of those adjustments, and if it's leading to what Ellen is talking about, then, you know, as they try to do other things and go deeper, then what is its impact going to be? And the Business Service Center was that first attempt to deal with issues like this, and it was not successful, and it didn't reach all of the goals.
No.
And we heard from Bob Ferran and other people from finance that sold us a bill of goods, and it didn't achieve what they wanted to achieve.
This is a new bill of goods. Jerry?
Will the MTA be offering any packages or enticements for people to retire to get that 2,700 people, or?
They haven't said yet, but I wouldn't be surprised.
They said that they weren't.
Well, they said at that time.
At that
At that
time,
time.
yeah.
That was a while ago. Every day is a new day.
Yes, yes.
I hear you say that they're putting out RFPs for new positions.
They don't put out RFPs for positions, so they are hiring for certain positions that are needed functions, some from within, some from outside. They put out RFPs for companies that are experts in reorganization of or in specific areas like finance or legal or communications, to have them develop a plan for merging the different, there's 5 different communications, 6 different communications offices for merging them.
Isn't that what this transformation officer is supposed to be doing? Because it sounds like they're going to spend more money to find out how to save some money, maybe.
This was yes. So we have, this is part of this is a conversation that's happened at the board, where there has been, some of the members have expressed concern that the transformation is moving forward without the CTO, but there has been a team within the MTA that has been very and specifically dedicated to focusing on this. So are you asking me if it's rational?
It would be,
No, it just seems to me, I don't know, maybe I'm been in this world too long and have seen how these things go on. This is not the first time something like this has happened. But that rather than looking inside to see who can solve some of these problems or work on some of these things, immediately you say, we don't know anything, let's go outside and let's hire experts. And maybe I'm putting it in a very snide way, but it's like we have to spend money to see if maybe we can save some money down the line.
Well,
and
they've
the
definitely spent
expertise
money.
is running out the door,
And-
so the tail is wagging the dog.
Yeah, and it just doesn't seem, well, it hasn't in the past, and it doesn't now seem to make any sense. And I was hoping that maybe things were changing, but obviously they're not, because Pat
Changing
is.
with a different name and a different way of doing it, but still the same
Trudy,
story.
also, I would say there is a value to getting our hands on the RFP that was issued and seeing what's inside of those packages
Could we,
of what they're
could we,
asking. I
could
think that
we
would
get
be-
our hand on that
Let's move
RFP?
on because we have a few things to do
Well,
before our
but I'm
speaker.
asking, I'm
We
putting,
will.
going on the record, asking.
will try to get the
If we
RFP,
can get
yes.
the RFP, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. We have a couple of happy things to do here. A couple of certificates. There's actually 3, but one of those folks is not here today. So 10 years of dedicated service to the PCAC, Larry Rubenstein.
And then we'll get a picture. Thank you. Wait, stay
Stay up
We're gonna
there
do a photo.
because we have another one for Randy Glucksman.
Yay! Larry, come on up. Let's go. Let's get you guys right under a PCAC sign over here. So we can take a picture.
And the other one was for Sheila Carpenter, but Sheila is not with us at the moment today, so.
And we weren't able to change the letter.
Right.
No, she's got it. I'll take a picture of Sheila taking a picture. Okay. Thank you.
It's not worth anything.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We have a question.
Yes.
I'll use this one. Thank you. Just 2 quick questions, if this is old or new business. You mentioned design build. Just the other day, I read a report that design build is a failure. At least one consultant decided it doesn't work, it doesn't save money, and it's not any better than the system that it's replacing. I'm just throwing that out there to see if we and everybody else should keep an eye on that, because it's a popular gimmick, and maybe it's just a gimmick, but I don't know. My second question. and I'll-
Legislatively mandated, but the board definitely intends to look at that.
The other day, there was some foul weather, and the L train unraveled. Their new signal system, it was a 7. But you know what I'm talking about. What was the explanation, and is the contractor at fault and have to pay for the repairs or the remediation?
Yes, Thales was the contractor. It was a transponder along the elevated number 7 line that failed. This wasn't even a big storm, so you can imagine. However, even though the L line, which is the other line equipped with CBTC, has similar transponders, it does have some outdoor sections. That has not failed. So we're going to try to find out what was different about this one. Interestingly, the new chief operating officer comes from Thales. So I assume we're going to get some action. And Pete Tomlin is definitely looking into it, the signals man. It should not have happened, much less on a
This-
small storm like this.
This is I'm sorry, I have forgotten your name. You get to be my age, you forget your own name. Eric. That you should know that whenever a design build has been brought up anywhere in any construction, city, state, in other states, there is always somebody who doesn't get the contract who then says, it's no good, it's things, and they put out statements. Because when I saw this, I can't remember now which was the consultant that had the latest thing, but it's somebody that I know. I just can't remember right now. So don't worry about, because design build by people who really know how to get things done say it's the best idea that's come along in a long, long time. Okay?
Yeah, that depends.
Mr. X?
Is this not old business?
It can be.
Okay, well, I got something for you.
Can't see it from here, but
Well, listen, let me tell you, you need to do some with these three individuals. Here we got Andre Agassi with our book shields. Over here we got
can't see.
Curtis Mayfield and Godzilla.
We don't know who those people are, please.
Well, you'll discover who they are when
I'm sorry, that's not appropriate. If you're going to speak about people, use their names.
as I said, you need to do something with them. Because I already complained about one of them. It's getting ridiculous, it really is.
We have no idea who you're talking about. If you're going to complain about somebody or talk about them, you need
Yeah,
to
it's
use
not
their names.
helpful.
It's not appropriate.
Well, Owen was supposed to be here, and I learned he's not. Well, he and his reliever, who's scheduled to be here today, need to take action because over the years, I complained about the MTA Police Department. I did it here. I did it MTA-wise.
yeah,
It's
you
getting
actually got an apology at the last meeting from somebody that wasn't even responsible for what happened to you. So I think that's done. We can't,
Okay,
we can't do that every meeting.
I didn't get an apology. You
Yeah,
got
you
it.
did.
That's absolutely did, and it's on
Yeah,
tape.
it's on. It's recorded. We got it.
We were all there. You got it.
That's more than a lot of people get. So
I just recall that. You can form it by it later.
All right.
But I just want to submit it later today.
You can
you
submit it.
or
You can
him.
submit it.
Okay,
Um,
not a problem.
Okay.
There was another issue I wanted to bring up that's sort of a hot topic now, which is debarment of contractors. At the last board meeting, in one of the board books, there was a contract that included notes that said that 3 contractors did not bid because of issues with the contract. And when they were asked about that, Veronica Vanderpool, who's the departing board member, unfortunately asked about that, and the response was that they didn't want to deal with the debarment regulations as written because they're too harsh. Shortly after that, a lawsuit was filed by a group of contractors. I don't remember what the acronym is, but saying that the debarment regulations are unconstitutional, and there were 3 or 4 other there were 3 or 4 other issues that they raised. So debarment is kind of a tricky issue, and we raised this, and it was raised several times at the joint legislative hearing that we attended a couple of last month. As part of the budget, the legislature passed regulations that said that required the MTA to develop a process to debar contractors who were 10% over budget or 10% over time in delivering their contract. And it's not just physical construction, it's contractors of all different kinds. The MTA shortly thereafter, in executive session, it was announced that the MTA was filing emergency debarment regulations to immediately debar anybody who hit the 10% mark, and that included debarment not just from the MTA, but for every state agency. So it went further than the legislative.
And it was made retroactive.
And it was made retroactive to April, so that contractors who had active work going on were told that now they were bound by these principles. And it's been extended several times. Actually, the last emergency regulation runs out on December 16th. So the board has been told several times that the agency would come up with some recommendations that the board would then have the ability to vote on. We expressed concern immediately that this is way too important to do behind closed doors, and that there needs to be input from the public and certainly from the board before these emergency regulations can be put out.
And the upshot of some of this is that existing contractors who want to continue to do business with the MTA are inflating their costs and their time to do a job because they're taking into account the possible penalties they may incur.
Yeah, we've heard that anecdotally.
So having less bidders is not a good thing.
Right, and higher costs.
Fewer
So
bidders. Yeah.
that is, that's a concern. That's something that we're continuing to work on. We're working with other advocates and also continuing to, there should be some news stories coming out in the next week or so about the concerns. And it's just, you can't do these kind of things. The MTA is not in a constant state of emergency. Where does it end? That there needs to be daylight into these processes.
Executive Order 168 has been extended, what, 4 or 5 times now? I mean, it's just never ending.
So if there, it's not easy or pretty or a sexy topic,
And
but
this
it is
affects
important.
all of the councils because projects are, are not going to be bid on by contractors, or your projects are going to get more expensive.
And this really has the opportunity to play out badly in the capital program. If there are not enough contractors to do the tremendous amount of work that needs to be done, and if the costs go up and the time delays go further, then that's sort of setting yourself up for failure before you even start. So we're looking at it in that context too.
Any other items of old business before we move to new business? Yes, Edith, your mic, please.
Like every elevator was out today, including things not on the list. It was fun. I have a question for the Long Island Railroad report, just a very quick question here. They mentioned the taxis in the parking issue. And just a very quick question, do the taxis pay for, do they bid and get franchises? I was looking at the issue about accessible taxis, and there's a real dearth of them on Long Island.
Yeah.
And just wondering if there was any way of looking at stacking the deck to attract companies that are somewhat accessible. I'm just really tired of having to wheel from the train station to my brother's houses.
They do lease out from the stations. It's been an issue we've had for quite a while. So actually at our next meeting, we're having MTA Real Estate come to discuss how the contracts are given out, how long they are. It's a major problem because we've got taxis that don't have taxis at all because people aren't driving taxis anymore, take up spots. And you come out there and there's no taxi, you end up calling Uber anyway. So it's an issue we're concerned about on various levels, on just not having taxis there and losing those parking spaces for riders or people who may need closer spots. Because usually the closest spots to the station, to the trains, are those cab spots.
Does this vary by town or jurisdiction?
No, this is the railroad.
Okay,
This is
okay.
the MTA who's doing it. And that's why we've been asking by letter and haven't gotten responses. So now we've requested someone come to our meeting in January.
New business. I had Thanksgiving dinner on Staten Island with Arlene. Many of you remember Arlene Bronzeff, Dr. Arlene Bronzeff, at her daughter's house. But she has another daughter who was there, who lives in Bayside, Douglaston. And the question came up. We started talking about the Freedom Ticket, something that we're proud of. And I found out that the Freedom Ticket does not work at Bayside, Little Neck, Douglaston, and they said, if you're going to do something, why discriminate against us? So I was wondering, Andrew, or if you had any information, or else if you could get some information about why it doesn't go on those. I guess it's the Port Washington line.
First of all, when we got Atlantic Ticket, which is, well, what we're using now is called Atlantic Ticket because it goes to Atlantic Terminal.
Okay.
We did a lot of research. Tom Prendergast was chairman of MTA at that point, and he thought construction of the Amtrak East River tunnels was fairly soon coming, and so did not want to impact you know, any trains that might be, the frequency might be lessened because only like one sequentially East River 2 would be taken out of service. So that's why we focused on Brooklyn. So it's only for Southeast Queens, because those stations you mentioned are all on the Port Washington branch, and they all go to Penn Station, not Brooklyn. Hence, that is why it is not there.
I just want, Trudy, I want to add something as well. As part of the budget last year, passed was included in that past budget was funds, the first part of congestion pricing, they were called the Outer Borough Transit Fund. So that's funds, that's $50 million that's supposed to come from black cars. And everybody was surprised to hear that those funds were going to give discounts to riders on the far-flung regions of the of northern Queens, of northeast Queens. However, there's no details, there's no information, that it's not based in anything like capacity. I mean, when I go to Bayside, my husband's office is there. There are regularly canceled trains going on that line, and everybody is so jammed into the cars that it's really, you can't, they don't collect tickets because there's no way that people can get around. There's standing room to the point where there's just no more room. So the fact that there's a fund that was created basically as an opportunity for elected officials to add transit or to make travel for their constituents easier is not necessarily being applied with any rational study of capacity or ability.
There you go, using that word rational again. You gotta know that when you hear, forget that word. But no, let me just finish. The question is, if there is some funding, because we now know that at the earliest, the East Side connection won't be till the end of 2022. So that we're talking about at least 2 years, probably more, if I know from experience. But whatever it is there any chance of whatever you call, I still call it the Freedom Ticket, but you want to call it the Atlantic Ticket, whatever, that some money for these people who live in Northeast Queens, where I used to live a long time ago, but I know what it's like.
Yeah, that's what, as Lisa said, that's the Outer Borough Transit Fund that Lisa was talking about.
But
keep
you
in
also
mind,
said something
Trudy,
else.
something very important is that Bradley did a very thorough analysis of available seats. And while there were quite a few available seats on the trains going through Rosedale and Laurelton and those places, I'm sure that he would find something different on the Port Washington branch.
Well, Lisa said that they cancel a lot of trains, which
I know, which makes it even worse.
Why are they canceling
Well,
so
they've
many
been
trains?
doing work. They've been doing work.
So I
between-
can't, off the top of my head, I don't remember the numbers because I actually did the Port Washington analysis again within the last several months, but there is very limited capacity on that branch. For some reason, 24% available capacity is sticking out in my head, which we've deemed to not have enough room to accommodate additional passengers. So,
Mark, did you want to say something?
I guess that answer will suffice. It's not just about funding. If the purpose is to get people off the subways onto the railroads, there has to be room for them on the railroad. All right, so let me say. So I'm not so sure. That's why there was an initial pilot done right now. It's going to be analyzed. Remember, we have a lot of projects opening up on Long Island, second track, third track. They're going to bring more people onto the trains. So I think it's not just a question of where the funding is for a discount. There's an issue as to whether or not this whole project can be expanded. So let's just wait and see what the pilot program and the analysis of it is, and go step by step.
But Mark, you just said get people off of the subways and onto the railroad. I am talking about areas that do not have any subway connection, that for these people to get to a subway, they've got to take a bus or sometimes take a cab or a car to a bus to get to the nearest subway, which would be Flushing.
But that's not my understanding of what the project was for. It was to lessen the subway congestion. That was the reason for
No,
this.
and no,
I'm
that was
telling you,
not, what it
that's
was
how it was
for.
explained to us.
What it was
This is not-
for was to make
But
available.
we don't have to talk about this now. We have our
Okay.
speaker.
Well,
waiting.
could somebody get me in writing maybe?
Trudy, nobody knows. I've asked everybody. I've asked the people who wrote the legislation. I've asked the people who asked for it. I've asked the people who announced it. There is no answer because there has been no decisions made on when it's going to happen, what's going to happen, or what what it is. There's just an announcement that surprised everybody, including the people who run the railroad.
Okay.
And interestingly, it was supposed to be for a discount on monthly tickets, not a freedom ticket type of event. And it was including Flushing, which does have subways, so, and Woodside, so there you go. Yeah, yeah. Quickly.
One thing that we also need, if we do go through this, and I said the word if, we need to look at the congestion on the 7 line as well, because there are times when the 7 is out, cross-honoring on the Long Island Railroad is also heavy. But there has also been a lot of increasement on overpacked buses from Flushing to Bayside or Douglasson. Either way, there's something we need to maybe challenge ourselves. Maybe it's not just Long Island Railroad, but something needs to be tried out in different directions. There is a lot of congestion.
I mean, you could argue that the Port
No,
Washington.
I'm not arguing.
No,
I'm saying
I'm
think
saying
about it.
something. The Port Washington branch, which is like 3/4 of its route is within the city limits, probably could have been a transit line if people had thought about it then. But anyway.
So I would say the bus redesigns that are happening are supposed to take all of that and make it more rational. Some of the other issues, I mean, if you look at Twitter and you see 7 bus lines in the Flushing area are having significant delays because of congestion and congested streets, that's an enforcement issue. That's a whole nother issue that needs to really be addressed. So.
Okay. So, please come up. Yes. Pleasure to introduce Chief McGran. He was appointed to MTA Police on March 1st of 2017 after serving over 30 years in the NYPD. Born and raised in Brooklyn, has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from John Jay College and a master's degree in public administration from Marist College. While in the NYPD, served in Crown Heights, East New York, Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene, and downtown Brooklyn, as well as Jamaica. How did Jamaica fit into that? It's not Brooklyn. I know. Yeah, I guess. He also served as the commanding officer of the Chief of Department and as the executive officer of the Police Commissioner's Office. As Chief of Operations for Administration, he oversees the budget, personnel, and training for the department. He is also responsible for facilities management of the 9 police districts and substations throughout the system. Where do you live, Chief? It doesn't say.
Oh, right now I'm on Long Island because that's where my wife is from, and as
Okay.
most of us know, that's where we end up, where our spouses from.
Not all of us.
Not all of us. Very true.
But thank you for being here. We believe that.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask real quick if now that we have a quorum, if you can vote on the agenda and the minutes.
Motion to.
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, everybody, great, thank you.
Hello, Bert. We're really happy to see you. I always thank all the police officers I see in the subways. There are so many issues, attacks on transit transit workers, attacks on people, the homeless lying around, which is not good for them either. Fare evasion. I mean, there's the list. There's just so many quality of life things now. So we're really happy to see you, and we're happy to hear what you have to say.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. Chief Monahan sends his regards. Unfortunately, he could not be here today. He had another obligation to attend to. But what I'd like to do right now is tell you a little bit more about myself, about where we are as far as the MTA Police Department is, and then, of course, accept any questions or concerns that you may have. As was pointed out, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, a product of the Brooklyn school system. I went to grammar school in Dyker Heights. I went to high school on Washington and Atlantic in the Fort Greene area. And then I went on to John Jay College and, of course, Marist College. In addition, I have a certificate from Columbia University for the Police Management Institute. which I was sent to by Commissioner Kelly. God, it seems like 100 years ago, but it wasn't that long ago. And as a result, I come to this agency well prepared and yet still quite surprised at how things get done. It's a different system that I'm still getting used to after almost 3 years of being here. But it's been challenging. It's challenging for all of us. I know that it's challenging times. It's become difficult and a lot of uncertainty right now. Hopefully things will calm down in the very near future and we'll be able to move on. But I remember the Brooklyn, those of you who are from Brooklyn, you remember the same things, hopefully. There was an old TV series called Welcome Back, Kotter.
Yes.
Okay, and in the beginning of it, they showed the elevated line going past New York High School, and it was covered with graffiti. Covered front to back, top to bottom, graffiti, scratch-eaty, everything you can name. And that's one of the biggest changes I've noticed in coming to the MTA. I don't see that anymore. Do we have some? Of course, you're always going to have some, but certainly not back to those days where every square inch possible was covered and even recovered. Times have certainly changed from the 70s when I was going to high school in Brooklyn, and they've changed for the better. That doesn't mean we don't have our issues and our challenges. So to bring you up to speed as where we are today, I came on, as I said, almost 3 years ago. We have a head count of just under 800 police officers, uniformed police officers, and then a number of civilian clerical workers, which we could not function without. They are critical to our everyday function. We have the 911 operators, we have our radio dispatchers, we have our clerks, we have our budget people. They are critical to police operations every day. I was speaking to some of our 911 operators just this morning, and I was thanking them for their service because in very, very many ways, they are truly the first responders. They are the person that picks up that call from a frantic individual in need of help and has to calm down the situation to the point where we can get as much information as we possibly can to give it out to the units in the field so they know what they're walking into. I go back to the days of 9/11, just very briefly. Back to the days of 9/11, I had to listen to some of those heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching tapes that 9/11 operators were handling. People that were trapped in those buildings and knew they were not getting out. They knew they couldn't get down. And it was the 9/11 operator, the only person there, that could try to calm them a little bit, give them a little peace of mind, even took messages for family members because they couldn't get through. It's very important, and I don't mean to dwell on it, but it was something that comes to mind because I was talking to our own 9/11 operators just this morning. They are truly first responders, and I don't think they get enough credit. Along those lines, I was also around for the Miracle on the Hudson. I was the duty chief that night. I got to meet Sully Sullenberg, and a little backstory in case you don't know, in case you didn't see any of the documentaries or films on it. There was a point where we're over on the pier on the west side, and we're still getting people out of the water. Thanks to these private ferries that were picking them up and bringing them over, and private ships bringing them over. And at one point, the mayor at the time, Mayor Bloomberg and Police Commissioner Kelly, were at another site ready to hold a press conference, and they wanted Captain Sullenberger to go over there. Well, Captain Sully Sullenberger, to his credit, said, "I'm not leaving my passengers. My passengers are here, and they're still coming here. You can tell the mayor and the police commissioner whatever you want, but I am not leaving them." And of course, I looked at him and said, "Please, I can't tell my police commissioner you're not coming." So fortunately, there was another individual there who outranked me, and I said, "Chief, you better handle this because you got a problem." But the mayor and the commissioner, to their credit, said, "That's right. He's right. That's the right thing to do. We will come to him." And that's just another little side story. Give you a little bit of my background. I've also worked in the precincts in Brooklyn and Jamaica somehow, which really rounded out my career. Now, bringing us up to speed today, where are we? As I said, we have when I came on board, we had an almost 800 uniform head count, but now in recent months, we were asked to up that number, another 500, to address current concerns. Current concerns are, as we mentioned, assaults on transit workers, fare evasion, which is a huge problem, homelessness, which is also a difficult situation. I don't know if there is a permanent solution, but if I can start with the homeless situation, we have teams out there every night at the end of the line, and we encounter the homeless people. Since we started this program only a few short months ago, we have 23,000 contacts with homeless individuals in the subway systems. We have provided assistance, or they have accepted assistance, in 1,200 cases where we can get them to a homeless shelter or get them some other services that they might be in need of, whether it's hospital services or put them back in touch with family members who have lost touch with them. And then we have another 1,200 which we had to unfortunately eject from the system because they weren't willing to accept services and they weren't willing to go voluntarily, so we escorted them out of the system. We do this on the overnight when the trains are coming into the end of their run, so that the trains can be cleaned and prepared for the morning rush. For the most part, the program has been extremely successful. We don't have a single civilian complaint out of the 23,000 contacts we have made with homeless individuals. We have not had a single negative interaction where we had to forcibly remove or arrest an individual. So to date, and I'm knocking wood over here, as you can see, to date, we've had a very successful program in that regard. If I can address the fare evasion problem for a moment, I think everybody here is very well aware that the fare evasion is also a difficult situation to deal with. There are people who perhaps cannot, or there are people, I shouldn't say can, perhaps I should say there are people who cannot afford the fare. So we have programs in place for students and for other individuals whereby they get a certain amount of discount off the price of the fare. But then we also have people that can and choose not to. And those are the people that we really direct our efforts at. What we do as far as fare evasion goes is that we will position ourselves in front of the turnstiles so that people can see us as they approach. If they choose not to enter the system for whatever reason, they're free to leave. We don't stop them. They come down, they see us, they say either I'm going to pay the fare or I'm going to leave. Very, very, very few times do we have a situation where the person becomes a little bit more resistant to paying the fare. We did have one, I hesitate to use the word elderly since people look at me the same, but we had an elderly woman who said, I haven't paid the fare in 30 years, I'm not going to start today. And we have occasional instances of that. But for the most part, people see us and either they're going to pay or they're going to leave. And maybe they'll go to another stop. I don't know what they do after they leave. Like we say, we don't challenge them. We don't confront them. We just say, pay the fare or you have to go someplace else.
If your officers were not standing there on their phones, it's a
Microphone, Edith?
perception.
It has to be on the record.
Okay. Excuse me. I mean, there are 4 cops standing there. I come through the gate with my card, and 2 people follow me. And none of those cops say anything to the people following me. I mean, I will pull the gate closed behind me, but I shouldn't have to be. They're there for a reason.
You're absolutely correct. I'm hoping that they're not MTA police officers because the Transit Bureau of the city is also down there with us. But they are trained to take action for people that avoid paying the fare. Now, our officers are usually positioned on the outside of the turnstile, not on the inside of the turnstile, because they're there as a preventive measure. They are not really there to arrest people unless it's absolutely necessary. But I think we know that the certain district attorneys have declined to prosecute such cases. So it's almost counterproductive for an officer now to make an arrest and then leave that particular post unguarded for other people now to go through this the gate in order to have a district attorney decline to prosecute. So you can see the struggle that we have with this particular situation. So our remedy is to stand there as a deterrent, and for the most part, I would say well over 90% of the time, it's an effective procedure. Okay. Do I want to? No. Okay. So hiring the 500 police officers is a challenge. Since we only went from 800, now we're increasing to another 500. We are really putting our nose to the grindstone to get it accomplished. We still want to hire the best that we possibly can. We don't want to be cutting any corners. But because we are trying to expedite it, we are looking for people who are currently police officers certified in the state of New York. When I say certified, the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services is the one that certifies police officers in the state of New York. They have to go through a certain amount of training hours. They have to have a certain amount of curriculum. They have to have a certain amount of instruction in order to become a police officer in this state. In order to expedite the hiring of these officers, we prefer to hire people who are currently officers in other agencies. Translation, the majority of them do come from the NYPD. They do. The NYPD, understandably, has declined to allow us to use their police academy, as we have in the past, because, as they put it, we're hiring rather large classes because a number of our officers are going to another agency. I know what they mean, all right? And I get it. I'm from that side, and I've been on both sides of the fence now. I get what the problem is or what the issue is. So what we are doing right now is we have reached out to other police departments in the area to train our officers who are not currently police officers. But in the meantime, we will push forward with hiring as many certified police officers as we can so that we can get up to the appropriate number. In addition to bringing on the 500 officers, that has other concerns. Where do I put them? Right. Okay, as you can imagine. So we are looking at other places, preferably in the city, since the bulk of them will be used for enforcement in the transit facilities, for homelessness, and for fare evasion. As you can imagine, the locations are very limited. Not everybody wants to have police officers with firearms in their facilities. Not everybody has parking available for not just police vehicles, but private vehicles. It's become a challenge. We are also looking at some places outside, but in nearby locations to the city so that we can get here quickly. I would rather have the officers assigned as close to the transit facilities as possible to cut down on travel time and get them into the system as quickly as possible. But as you can imagine, it is a real challenge. And then, of course, outfitting the officers. They have come on board with a tremendous amount of equipment. They have their vests, their firearms, their mace, their tasers, the body cameras we don't have yet, but we are getting those, okay? And I'm glad you brought that up because that has also become somewhat of an issue. Many police departments, not all, many police departments already have the body cameras. At first, there was a lot of resistance, even in my old agency with the city. A lot of resistance officers had, but now they've come about and they've come around and they realize, you know what? Everybody out there has a cell phone pointed at us. It's about time we had something to rebut it with. Let's get our side of the story. I don't know if you're aware or not that it was an arrest out on Long Island. It's all over YouTube today, where force had to be used to take down a suspect. But you're only seeing the force that was used to take down the suspect. You don't see what led up to it because the officer did not have a body camera when he was taking him down. The governor has said that the state police will get body cameras, and I believe there's proposed legislation in Albany right now mandating that the MTA police have body cameras. We actually look forward to it. It's a learning curve. It's a training issue. We're looking for best practices. There are times when you must have the camera on according to regulations. There are times you're prohibited from having the camera on, when you're questioning the victim of sexual assault, when you're questioning a child, when you have certain situations where it's not appropriate to have the camera on. So there's a lot of training involved, not just the purchase of the camera, but also the storage of the material once we have the cameras. The storage is what costs so much money. Some of these companies will give you the camera. It's almost like your cell phone plan. We'll give you a phone, but you're going to pay us for its use. And the same is pretty much the issue with the cell phone cameras. They'll be happy to hand you the camera, but now storing the information is what they want. So there's a lot of issues involved in it. We expect to hopefully have it completed by the end of 2020, although we haven't started the purchase of these items just yet. But The body cameras are something that is coming down the pipe for us. Is there another issue of particular concern that you're interested in my addressing? Okay. In that case, I'll just talk about crime very briefly. Crime along the system, Long Island Railroad Metro North system, is at a record low for the I believe it's the third year in a row. We're down 10% over last year, which was a record low for us. For the outer Metro North Railroad, Long Island Railroad, Staten Island Rapid Transit, our numbers are down. So our officers are doing a very good job out there. They are making arrests where the arrests are warranted. They are providing assistance to the homeless when the homeless person is amenable to it. They are issuing summonses when it's necessary, but for the most part, they're doing a very, very good job. Some of the other challenges that we have been having are the crossings. The crossings are always a challenge. It's always going to be that guy that thinks he can beat that train. And maybe 9 times out of 10 he does, but that 10th time he doesn't make it. All right, so we try to get our enforcement up a little bit at those railroad crossings. But for the most part, we've been, again, knock wood, we've been doing a very good job in that particular area, and I don't want to jinx it, but we've been without a serious incident in a while. I mean, as far as the individuals that are being struck by trains, unfortunately, it's out there. It's apparently a quick way to commit, a quick, easy way to end your life if you choose to, and it's unfortunate, but people sometimes see it that way.
There's a great sign along the Amtrak right away in Delaware that says maybe you can beat the train, and then under it says maybe you're dead wrong.
Ooh, that is a good sign.
Just before you came, there was a trespass strike on the PCAC Valley line.
Yeah,
service has been resumed there for an hour.
Right, I did get that message. And those, of course, are tougher. The people that choose to do it choose at their own time and place, and that's tougher over the thousands of miles of track that are out there. And some of the situations, I didn't mean to get off track here, but extremely sad when it's younger persons, 14, 15, 16-year-old, going through the high school angst, and they decide to end it in that way. Something that's come to light recently, and it's on the news just yesterday, as a matter of fact, is subway surfing. All right, another issue. Now that's been going on since they've had trains. Yeah, since they've had trains. They've been doing this. I don't know how you dissuade people like that. I also know that, and maybe you're aware of this particular trend. Maybe you're not. It seems to have died off. I shouldn't use that word. It seems to have. Tape it off, thank you. Tape it off a bit. The business about the kids lying on the yellow line at night, so the cars, you're shaking so cars pass on either side. Thrill seekers, all right, thrill seekers.
To come down here, fellow jumped down at 34th Street on the tracks. He thought he was going to find a cigarette. He picked it up and he wound up not taking it and came back up on the platform.
Right. Right. Well, cigarettes, cell phones, whatever they drop on the track, sure.
You said most of the new officers would be assigned to the city, and I guess percentage-wise that work, but you will be assigning more officers out to Long Island, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it will provide us with the opportunity to increase some of the outer districts with new officers. But for the most part, when you're brand new, and as you know, they bid their jobs.
Yeah.
When you're brand new, you normally end up in the city, which is not a bad thing. It gives them a taste of what the life is like as an MTA cop. But what that does, when they come into the city, the senior officers have the chance to bid out to Long Island, closer to home, or upstate New York.
No, the reason I ask that is, I understand you guys are spread a little thin out there. And I know you won't divulge staffing or assignments or things of that nature, but it was told to me by a very good source that like you had one car that would cover from Port Jefferson to Syosset on the northern branch of the Long Island Railroad. That's awful thin. Port Jeff to Syosset.
You don't have to tell me. Yes,
so I mean,
well aware.
You know, so if you can get more people out there, it would be a big help.
There's never
Can
anyone in Ronkonkoma. You got that lovely office that you redid,
Yes.
and there is never anyone there.
Okay, I've been to Ronkonkoma myself on
Yeah,
several
I mean, you know,
occasions.
like, I've
but-
been stuck on the platform when the elevators
Right.
were out, oh, I'm sorry. And, you know, I'm sorry. You know, and there's no way of contacting anyone, and you're just there. It's 2 in the morning.
I was unaware the elevators don't have some type of,
They don't. There's not an, there's no intercom.
right.
You basically either have to have a cell phone
Mm-hmm.
or hope that public phone by the elevator is working.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience, it's not, because it's a really fun and easy vandalism issue between Sachem High School kids and Connecticut High School kids. And it's a rite of passage.
Hi, Chief. So when you started your discussion, you were talking about many issues that were city-centric.
Yes.
And this body has people that are from the Long Island Railroad and Metro North.
Absolutely.
I happen to be a city representative, but could you share with us the top concerns for Metro North and Long Island Railroad? It may not be fare evasion, it may be. but
No,
just-
it's not. As a matter of
right,
fact,
so
I can
what are-
go right down the crimes. Our top crime. Okay, our top crime on both systems, and even on Staten Island, is larceny. People put that bag down. They use the restroom. They come back out. The bag is gone, or they forgot it. They left it on the train, and then they're hoping somebody turned it in. It's people that are sleeping. They wake up, and all of a sudden they don't have a package, a laptop, a pocketbook. You know, anecdotally, I'll tell you a quick story. I mean, the wallets are big. This individual realized he left his wallet on the train and was relieved when, as the doors were closing, he saw a responsible adult pick his wallet up, and was less relieved when he got the phone call from the credit card company saying there was some questionable purchases. But larceny is our number one. Assaults is number two, by the way. Assaults not just on the workers themselves, but passengers, you know, after a night out or something, on police officers trying to make an arrest on an individual that is just being uncooperative, doesn't want to pay the fare, doesn't want to get off the train, doesn't want to do whatever he's being instructed to do. So assaults is an issue. I would say after that is probably these bicycle thefts. I was a little surprised.
Chain clipping.
Chain clipping of high-end bicycles, but also bicycles you wouldn't want to ride. You know, they take it. You know, they take what they can. That's true. That's at stations. Yes, that's at stations. Okay.
Thank you. One other thought. Have you checked with sister agencies like the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority or the state entities to see if you could piggyback with their academies, or the state court system that's down here that has a robust academy?
In fact, I can tell you exactly who we spoke to, because we've used Westchester County before. Okay, Westchester County was unable to accommodate. Port Authority, they're unable to accommodate. We are in serious negotiations. I don't know if I'm telling stories out of school here yet, because I don't have a signed document. But it looks like we might be going to Nassau County. They seem amenable to it. All right, there'll be a cost, but we paid for the city academy, so we are looking. Rockland, okay. We're trying to keep it closer to the city, as you can understand. You know, trying to keep it closer to headquarters, because we have staff that has to go in and out and address the recruits while they're in training. The interesting thing about the city academy is that they hire on a consistent basis, at least twice a year, sometimes 4 times a year. They provide consistent training to the officers, and then once they're done, we get them for 2 weeks of additional MTA-centric training. The other academies will put in a class when they need it, and some of these academies don't hire for a year or longer. So it was convenient, and it will be convenient again one day, I'm hopeful.
This sort of piggybacks on a couple of things you've been saying, but if you could explain the difference between, or the interaction or whatever, between the Transit Bureau of the NYPD, which used to be called the Transit Police
I
and was
remember.
separate and apart, and it was not part of NYPD, and also the state police, because people keep on thinking, and I just noticed your badge, your insignia, where it says Police New York State, which can even be more confusing. So if you could explain where you overlap,
Sure.
where you interact, and where you don't.
I'll start with the top and work my way down here.
I would appreciate it, and I think a lot of other people would also.
Certainly. The state police, of course, have jurisdiction throughout the entire state of New York. All right? They are you can't say the big cats that get insulted. They call them, what do they refer to them as? Tigers? No, they have a term for it, but if you call them big hats, you'll never hear the end of it. In any case, they are the ones that are under the direct authority of the governor of the state of New York. They have troops throughout the entire state, and talk about being spread thin. They're spread pretty thin. This is a very large state, as you're aware, and so they have coverage from Montauk Point in Long Island up to Buffalo and places I've never heard of, all the way out there in the West. So they are the people that have the most jurisdiction throughout the entire state. The police, the city police, the Transit Bureau. I was in the Transit Bureau, by the way, longest year of my life. We were in the Transit Bureau. The Transit Bureau for the NYPD has jurisdiction throughout the city of New York, all right? So they enforce everything in the city of New York, but they are centrally concerned about the transit system. And the MTA gives them a considerable amount of money for that coverage, all right? How much, I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. But having worked in the Transit Bureau, I can tell you it's a very elaborate, extensive system. I've been down at the Mott Avenue station, down in the Rockaways, all the way up to the end of the number 4 line in the Bronx, and Woodlawn, thank you, Woodlawn up in the Bronx, and every place in between. So they have a very large area to cover as well. And their issues run the gamut from what our issues are, from the fare evasion to the homeless to muggings in the system, to crimes in the system. Chief Delatorre, a friend of mine I've worked with, actually we came on together 100 years ago. Chief Delatorre is the current chief in charge of the Transit Bureau for the NYPD. I'm sorry? I wasn't going to say that, but okay. In any case, I think he's done a good job of it. Vinnie Coogan is his executive officer with Jerry Dykeman. And they have an army. They have a small army of police officers that cover the entire system.
They are the successors to what used to be called separate and apart, the transit police, and then they were brought into
That's
the
correct.
NYPD. Okay, then.
That was done under Bill Bratton in the mid-90s.
Right, exactly, because he was the head of it in the mid-90s before he became police commissioner, and then he brought everybody in with him. But then, where do you come in with all of this?
Okay, now the MTA, for the most part, maintained its own police. Well, all right, I'll back it up since we're only 20 years old as an MTA police department. The Long Island Railroad Police and the Metro North Police and the Staten Island Rapid Transit, SERTOA Police, were 3 separate agencies 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the decision was made to merge the Metro North Police Department with the Long Island Railroad Police Department, and the primary responsibility was the commuter rails. That's what it was. Grand Central on the, for the Metro North, and then Penn Station for the Long Island Railroad were their main headquarters. For Staten Island Rapid Transit, SERTOA, they came on board a few years later, I think in 05. I believe it was 05. I don't think you can't hold me to that. But I believe 05, the decision was made, okay, Staten Island Rapid Transit, you're now going to fall under the MTA Police Department. Now we are just one a big happy family, as they say. And we are predominantly responsible for the commuter railroads and the Staten Island rail system.
And where the confusion seems to be, especially, is a lot of times you will find state police, like in Grand Central Terminal, and they don't go down to the station, but in the terminal. And then you hear about 500 more being hired, and in almost every news report and every media, it says they're going to be state police. They don't say MTA police. I mean, I have heard this, well, I have, and other people, and they may be confusing. People here, it's the governor's doing it, so it's the state police. So can you explain that and how you will be interacting with the state police when you get
We
your
got a few more
500
questions, so
hires?
let's do this
Yeah,
rapidly.
but please, I think,
Okay. Okay. We cooperate very well with the state police. The state police superintendent, a good man, who, is very concerned with how we do interact. The state police and the National Guard, for that matter, were put to high density, high profile areas such as Grand Central and Penn Station as a threat deterrent for terrorists. That's why they're there. Do we cooperate with each other? Every day we cooperate with each other. Keith Corlett is the state police superintendent. I've known him for a number of years. He and I speak occasionally, but we see each other at different events or meetings, and we're always talking with each other. If Keith's not available, I know I can pick up the phone at any time and call his captain, who is the liaison with not just the MTA police, but the city police and other police agency. His captain is Michael Sullivan, a great man and a good friend also. I know that at any time we need something done, I can pick up the phone and call them, and they know just as well they can pick up the phone and call me. I'll give you a perfect example. There was an issue we were having on the Metro North line between the state police and some Metro North individuals. Michael Sullivan called me up and said, "Can you help us out?" And of course, I put him in touch with the right people. Everything got ironed out, and everybody ended up happy in the end. So we do cooperate very well with each other. As far as the National Guard goes, National Guard is a little different. National Guard, they're soldiers. That's what they are. You know, they charge that hill, take that hill. They operate a little differently. They intimidate me a little bit because they are a tough bunch. And if I were a terrorist, I would certainly stay away from them. But they are in these facilities as a deterrent to terrorists, and it seems to be working very well, very effectively. We drill together on occasions. We work together on occasions. We do tabletops, just so we know what to expect from each other should a crisis occur.
thank you.
Good. I'm sorry.
Quirky question, but do you have distinct jurisdictions? Because I complained once, it was a couple of years ago, but of the homeless down by the 123 trains, and then there's a car that leads out. And I was told by MTA police, well, that's not our jurisdiction. That's, yeah, they said, we're Penn Station, that's considered transit, that's not our jurisdiction. So it's like,
yeah.
go find somebody else to complain.
All right,
And
that's
I
not
just
the
wanted
way.
to see if that was
That's the way
true.
it should have been handled. I mean, you approach an officer with a legitimate complaint, he should handle it, or he should refer it, not you, not
Yeah.
tell you to refer it. The issue is, yes, we have separate jurisdictions, but if an incident occurs, we are expected to respond. But we do have separate, they'll take care of the subways at Penn Station and Grand Central. We'll take care of the commuter trains. But if there's an issue, we will certainly help them out, and they'll always more than willing to come and help us.
Are you in communication with each other? Do your
Yes, we
radios
are.
work?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Okay. Well, the reason I had found that confusing was I had seen MTA police stop cars on a highway, and I said, what's up with that? And they said, they're officers of the law, and if they spot somebody violating the law, they are obligated to, I mean, they're not going to go for someone doing 60 and a 55 miles.
Right.
But if they saw something egregious,
Somebody acting.
they were obligated to stop and take action.
That's
Yeah.
the operative word, by the way, egregious.
Yeah.
That's right. They see something egregious. I wish I had taken a picture of that because I've never seen that myself. One of my officers make a highway stop. Yeah, we do have a highway unit, but the highway unit's main function is the crossings, to enforce at the crossings. And lately we have been cooperating in keeping those bus lanes moving in certain sections of the city, 34th Street in particular, because it's busy out there.
Question, sir.
Yes.
You're talking about these 500 new officers. How long is the training programs involved? You were talking, are they using out of state or?
No, I'll explain why the city might be a little upset with us. And like I said, I've been on both sides of the fence now. When we put a police officer through the police academy, we take a civilian off the street, you're newly hired, you go to the police academy for 6 months. 6 months. When you're done with that 6 months training, we give you 6 weeks field training. So now you've got all the book knowledge, the law and the procedures and all of the stuff that you need, de-escalation training and dealing with the emotionally disturbed person and stuff. But now we put you out in the field with a field training officer for 6 months, all right? And we make certain that you are well trained before you're put out there on your own. I'm sorry, 6 weeks for the field training, thank you. 6 months in the academy, 6 weeks field training. Now, why does the city get upset with us for taking what we call a rollover? Because they have gone out and recruited and hired and trained this person at considerable expense, and then we come along and say, oh, that's nice, you're done? Okay, come work with us now. Yeah, so they get a little, they've done all the legwork, and we take the person. No, their 6 months is done. They went through the academy, so we'll give them 6 weeks field training, but we saved a bundle. We actually pay $14,000 per recruit to send them to the police academy. So we're saving $14,000 when we, I don't want to use the word steal, acquire. Yes.
Chief, it's good to see you. There's a couple of questions I have, and I'm gonna do the best I can. I will do my best, as I said, if I don't get cut off or interrupted, and without the hands dancing. There is concern about homeless. It's been issued a lot. Definitely in your stations in Long Island Railroad and Jamaica. You got people, and I know if Sharon was here, she would have said something, same thing, but there has been a lot of issues with that station, with people asking, oh, can you swipe me in? It's in the border between you and the subway. That's one issue. The second issue is West Hampton. There's a homeless person, and I have this right here, because I did get a response back, but he disappears and he comes back. He disappears, he comes back. And I have seen this not just in that station, but I'm seeing it all along the Montel branch from West Hampton to Babylon. And to be honest, I think there's some safety concerns that needs to be adjusted, because one of them does sleep in a house. And the concern is why is he sleeping in there if a person's supposed to go in to stay warm, or he's plugging something in that can cause a fire? That's so many safety violations, it's like not even funny. How can we work together to deal with these? Because I see the New York State of Mental Health and Hygiene does not really care about try to push this up more. How can we, and I will say we as PCA, can work together to do something? Well, that's why I was waiting for you to say that, Andrew.
The homeless issue, as we've been discussing all along, is a serious challenge. The homeless will always be with us, unfortunately. Many of them are mentally ill. So you have an individual who has a perfectly good home, a place to stay, warmth, with food, shelter, everything else, and yet chooses to live on the streets, and we do have that. As far as the mental health law goes, unless they are a danger to themselves or another, they have the legal right to be homeless, and some people choose to be homeless. Now, that's why...
Actually, Chief, exposure on a 24/7 basis to rail dust is a health hazard.
Okay, then it's something that, you know, I was unaware of anyway. But they have this thing called code blue. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. When the temperature falls below, do you know the temperature?
It's anywhere, if it's in the Suffolk County area, it's down to 30, down to 20 degrees.
What happens below 20?
You'll be, as Edith said, you'll
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Okay, in any case, we have the thing called Code Blue, which in and of itself says if a person stays out in weather such as that and they are not properly attired, we can take them into custody against their will. You know, we don't like to, but we can. And deliver them, well, offer them the shelter system or someplace else so they don't turn blue. That's right. As far as what can we do in the meantime, we do monitor the situations. We do reach out to local community groups, which have been very helpful to us, particularly up at 125th Street. They've been very helpful to us up there because they cooperate. We call and they'll come. We work with the BRC. We work with other units to handle it. But it's a difficult situation. I don't think it will ever go away entirely.
Microphone, please.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your voice.
I'm from Washington Heights, and we've had a considerable problem at 181st Street. We had the older gentleman who was stabbed on the escalator. I believe it was Friday or Saturday, I can't remember. We have problems with the Port Authority, connecting directly into the subway. There are a number of issues, but what my major concern is the issue of training these new recruits and hires about appropriate interaction with people with disabilities. Many of us know a member of the community, the director at HILC, who was in a train, lights went out, cops were leading, everything, and she was left sitting in the corner of a train. She is partially deaf and she is partially blind. Until another passenger went over, tapped her and said, "Mamacita," and then let her out. I personally enter the subway with great trepidation on a daily basis. I know what's going to happen. I know what's not going to happen. I know I come in on the Long Island Railroad, and I'm coming under the East River, and if we have an evacuation, I'm here. I'm stuck. We have seen some films from the Boston transit system about the little hand carts. They're so cute. I feel as though they have a hand cart that they will go and rescue, and we supposedly have it also. But there's a real lack of awareness and sensitivity for many of your workers, many of your officers, about accommodating people with disabilities in the system. And it's a real problem that needs to be thrown on the table and better addressed, because this is our life, and I'm not going to take accessoride. And we really need to address it better. We need to know that your officers are aware, that your officers are, going to, God help us, rescue if necessary. But the bottom line is no one's ever going to rescue us. And it's really a concern. Okay, let's,
If we have to let him answer, we have to be out short.
Right. Okay. But
We're like 1 minute away, so.
never mind. It's
And
usual.
I think it's a valid question about
Yes.
what's the training for the disability community. Is there a way that we can help? I know that there used to be tabletop exercises that.
Which we're never included in.
Well, that we would like to participate in, to move things forward, to address some of the concerns that are raised, not just on transit system, but also on the commuter rails.
They do receive sensitivity training and de-escalation training. Maybe individual officers probably may not be as compassionate as they should be. That's something that we can't give them a shot in the arm for, unfortunately. I wish we could. But we do provide them with the necessary tools and training. I'm not familiar with this device you're talking about up in Boston, but
We actually have one supposedly in New York.
okay. Thank you.
Chief, thank you so much for this. This is really informative.
Thank you.
And we're in touch with Chief Delatorre all the time, and we think they're doing a great job, and we hope everyone stays safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a nice holiday if I don't see you.
Thank you so much. March 5th is the next full PCAC meeting for those who are marking their calendars, and have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you soon.
I'm going to say, Chief, I know that we're going to get follow-up questions, so if people have questions and would like to send them to me, I will compile them and send them to you. Okay.
Andrew? Yeah. So my question about the Omni?
Yeah.
We have any?
Not yet.
I mean, was,
I noticed, I saw what you saw.
I mean, I literally run into it